You can look like me, didn't you?
I told you to turn that off!
Jennifer van Gessel writes and directs Waterhorse, a 2024 found footage mockumentary that will have you scratching your head. It's kind of like X-Files, the found footage movie. So it focuses on mainly two characters, a paranormal researcher called Diane, who is driven by the mysterious disappearance of her mother some years ago, and an actor called Oz, who is kind of drawn to Diane for reasons that will go through in the movie. And these two set out with a cameraman called Reggie to document a variety of paranormal events that are initially seemingly unrelated, but upon closer inspection may seem that there is some type of connective tissue to them, and they may well have something to do with bodies of water and some type of paranormal entity that is to do with water. Now what will happen, you will have to watch the movie and find out. So this is a kind of found footage slash mockumentary style movie, but it really has more of a production value in some regards than a lot of found footage movies. Some of the shots here are, you know, are meant to be from a kind of documentary. It's spliced with archival footage. We've got music, so it feels less like a found footage movie in a way, and more of a, in at least some instances, a traditionally filmed movie. But I would certainly class this as a, you know, found footage style movie. So one thing I would say with this movie is maybe different to a lot of found footage films. With many found footage movies, you have a lot of preamble in regards to the movie, lots of kind of tromping around a certain area, arguing, and then you'll have a little 10-minute section at the end where the paranormal stuff happens. This movie, on the other hand, has like loads of things happening in it all throughout the movie. Many kind of mysteries, many kind of strange events, lots of kind of questions asked all through the movie. It never really has like a massive payoff sequence exactly, but what it does have is a lot more going on plot-wise than many found footage films. So that's really my first kind of thing to say about this film, is it is feeling like there's a lot of stuff in this film. There's a lot of plot in this movie. Maybe even too much, you might argue. But nonetheless, you certainly won't be thinking, man, nothing's happening in this movie, because there's loads happening. The plot is very dense. There's many kind of facets to the investigation, many sort of characters that sort of come in and out. There's a few interviews and things like this, and you know, we have a variety of like supporting actors and stuff that have their own kind of story, and it really seems very overwhelming for the kind of the characters, and particularly for their character of Oz, who is really an actor in the film. So he doesn't really have the background of Diane, who is a paranormal investigator who may have a little bit more experience in dealing with such things. So he's the best person to kind of try and kind of see it through his eyes, so to speak. But yeah, but there's a lot going on in this movie. There's multiple different cases in the film where we kind of come in and out of, all that are sort of end up being somewhat kind of connected, various different characters. So this movie's plot is sprawling and quite intense, and it's one of these films where it asks lots of questions and maybe doesn't give you all of the answers. So think of this very much like a kind of X-Files-y style episode in a way, where, you know, we are presented with a mystery here, and we'll get snippets of clues and kind of some answers and lots more questions, but maybe a lot of it is left somewhat unexplained, which does give it somewhat of a, you know, enthralling mystery because you are kept somewhat engaged throughout the whole movie because there is so much going on. I think coupled with that, I think the performances are very strong. This is an Australian movie. I'm not familiar with the people involved in this film, but I have to say I thought the performances were quite strong. I think believable kind of characters and believable performances. You know, you do believe that, you know, the character, for example, of Oz is really out of this depth. He doesn't really know what's kind of going on, but he knows that there is something, and it's enough to keep him on the hook. Whilst Diane maybe have a little bit more insight to this world, and is a little bit more sort of pushing forward, but maybe is blinded by her own sort of desire to find the truth, so to speak, that she somewhat ignores the dangers and stuff. So yeah, I think the characters are very well developed and kind of believable. The performances are solid. And as I say, if you're not a fan of the found footage genre, because it's a variety of shaky cam and, you know, camera distortions, there's a degree of that, but there's not a lot. I think the production value seems quite high. I mean, the camera work here is normally pretty solid. Everything's more or less in frame. There's good camera quality a lot of the time. As I say, it has a bit more of a cinematic vibe to it because, you know, this is presented to us like a documentary, like a forms documentary, so there is musical swells in the sort of more dramatic parts and things, and as I say, it's interspliced with archival footage and interviews, so it feels more like, less like raw footage that has been found and more of a, you know, documentary about these people that is using the footage, so to speak. So it has a higher production value in it. I think the subject matter as well is kind of unique. It's not really like, oh, it's a Bigfoot or it's kind of a haunted house. It's a kind of an interesting mystery that's more about like primordial forces and a real sense of the kind of the unknown here again. So it has that kind of that X-Files feel to it because, you know, it only really scratches the surface about what this could be. There are a couple of creepier sequences in it, although it's much more presented like a kind of I say a documentary in some ways. It's not exactly a scary movie, if that makes sense, although there are a couple of spooky sequences in the film. Maybe what doesn't work, I think maybe there's a bit too much going on in this film. In actual fact, I think in some respects it goes with so many different aspects to the plot here. I think some may found it a little overwhelming. You'll be like the character of Oz, where you don't really know what's kind of going on. You're just kind of there for the ride. And there's so many little side quests and portions of this story that it kind of feels like you're kind of skipping over a fair amount of the detail here, and as such I think maybe the plot ends up being a little bit convoluted at times. That's the only thing really I would say here. The only other critique I would say is that we have this third character called Reggie, who is the camera woman who is with our main two characters through the movie, but considering she's there for the whole of the story, she doesn't really have a huge amount to say about anything or have any real impact on the story. And although she's primarily there just to hold the camera and our other two characters are the storyteller, so to speak, I think if you were in this situation and you were present, you would be a bit more interactive with the environment. I'll give you an example. So there's one instance where they're in a cave and the character of Reggie is kind of walking backwards with the camera in front of her, filming Oz and the dying character. But then we hear there's some type of creature or some type of growling behind, and you would just turn around, wouldn't you? You wouldn't keep the camera sort of facing these sort of two characters and stuff. But that doesn't happen because we have to keep our two main sort of characters in frame. So there's things like that where I think the character of Reggie, even though we barely see her actually on screen, I feel realistically would have been a little bit more kind of interactive with what's going on, because she is there just as much as the other two, but because she doesn't say anything, you almost forget that she is actually present in pretty much all of this kind of stuff as well. So, you know, it's a complex movie. There's a lot to it. I think maybe if you just want a more of a traditional style found footage movie, there may be a little bit too much going on, and you might find it a little unsatisfying. It certainly doesn't try and over-explain anything here. It's a lot going on, and only some of it is really kind of answered. But if you do want somewhat of an intriguing movie with a lot going on that you really have to kind of pay attention to, and it being quite engaging, and very much a different sort of style found footage movie to maybe some you've seen here, I think it's worth a watch. I would say this is a solid movie, to be honest with you. I think it could have been a little easier to digest. I think it could have been made a little easier to digest. But overall, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? Would you see it based on what I've told you? Please do let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.